Hello everyone and welcome back to a very special pub rant, where, unlike a lot of the previous pub rants, this one is actually on location. Not live on location, this is all filmed in advance, but I took a trip out to our next topic of discussion. And that is York. The old one, obviously. The sequels are not nearly always as good. Sorry, New York, it's just the truth. So, what is York? Now, York is a city situated in the north of England. It's also about a 30-minute train ride from where I live. So, knowing it'd make a fun topic for a video, and I could, have some fun doing, a whole sort of live thing with it, I bought some tickets on cross-country, hopped aboard their train to Edinburgh, and took it one stop to York. Half an hour later, our Voyager pulled into York Station, and no offense to Leeds Station, but this is what a train station looks like. I know that you got redesigned in the 90s and early noughts, but York Station is just an absolutely beautiful piece of architecture, with the Victorian girders and glass still in place. It's a very nice looking station. So, why is York so interesting? And it mostly just comes down to the history of the place. York was first settled by the Romans, with a fort and small town which they called Eboracum. A couple centuries after they left, the Norse Vikings moved in, building on the ruins that the Romans had left behind and renaming the settlement to Jorvik. After the Norse left, the Anglo-Saxons, which eventually became the English, moved in, and slowly the name Jorvik changed over time to just simply be York. And it's because York has such a storied history that I felt it would make a great video. So, why was York settled? Why did all of these groups of people collectively decide, this place, this is where we're going to live? Now, the simple answer is rivers, as York is on the confluence of the Ouse and the Foss, two rivers that have basically built the city, as live me, or I guess York me, will explain.
York as a city has been around for over a millennia, and here is one of the two reasons why. This is the River Foss, and it confluences in this city with the River Ouse, and is those two rivers that have made this city vital throughout history. As the two founders of the modern city of York, the Roman city of Borkum, and the Norse city of Jorvik, were built specifically because of the trade that these rivers facilitated. Now, as you can clearly see with the Foss, it has now been gentrified and made into essentially a canal. Likely due to the Industrial Revolution. And so the rivers still have influence on this city to this day. They're the reason why it was founded. they've kept it together for quite a while. Now, earlier we were discussing the importance of rivers when we were over by the falls. Now, this is the other river that cuts through York, River Ouse. And this river is much more important than the falls, because this is the river that we spin around and walk across the road. About 30-40 miles that way is the Humber Estuary and the North Sea. And it is up this river that the Vikings sailed when they colonised what was left of the Roman Sea. Oh, land train. Didn't expect a land train. When they came across the ruins of the Roman Borkum and made it their own Jorvik.
So this brings us forward to our first time period. And our first interesting thing that can still be found today in modern York. I wonder if you can piece together why this piece of wall is so interesting before York Me is able to tell you.
Zoom and enhance. See that line there? That's where the Roman wall is. The medieval wall is built on top. Roman, medieval, Roman, medieval. Where's it gone? There was a squirrel. Cassie. Roman, medieval.
So yes, this is one of the few remnants of the Roman wall still left in York, which can still be seen to this day. Very interesting and very much worth a visit.
Now, here we have another part of York's Roman history. This is a Roman column. It's found in here. This is York Minster. Now on this site, it is thought that a Roman fort existed, and it was at this fort that a lot of Roman emperors, when they were visiting the province of Britannia, would stay on their way to the northern frontiers to fight the Picts, who we now call the Scottish. And over here, we have a statue here of Constantine the Great, one of the Roman emperors who may have stayed here, alongside, of course, Hadrian, famous for building Hadrian's Wall. The minster itself is massive. I don't think I could really show you the scale of just this absolutely huge Gothic structure here. But this thing took centuries to build. You might see some scaffolding around it. It's currently undergoing renovations to keep it all, working. That's York Minster. Very, very interesting building.
And so, with Roman York out the way, we move on to Viking York. And this facilitated a trip to the Jorvik Viking Centre. Now, I must first show this absolutely amazing little timeline thing that they do on the tours, because they have this little like pod ride that goes around. I'll speak more on it later, but they have this little video that plays at the start of it. And it just goes to show how long ago the Vikings were, and yet they still hold such a place in the identity of York. Now, in, I believe it was the 70s and 80s, there was a massive Viking dig that uncovered basically an entire street of Norse York, which, if you go to the Jorvik Centre, has been perfectly preserved under your feet. And in the Jorvik Centre, they have also recreated what large portions of the street would have looked like, and this is what you see on that tour. And, this is all filled in with animatronics, there's, like smell pods in there, so it actually smells like it should. It is an honestly really nice little tour around, what it would have been like to exist in York during the Viking era. And, of course, they also found a fair few skeletons in there. They also have this. Do what you will with this information, but they also have this. So, we move forward through time then to around about the Norman conquest, more specifically the year 1190, to this building, Clifford's Tower, which has an unfortunate history, as I'm about to tell you.
And now in our tale of York, we come to one of the more sadder parts of the city's history. This is Clifford's Tower. A Motte and Bailey castle like this has existed in this spot since probably the Anglo-Saxons. But the real story is what happened in 1190. Some 150 Jews seeking an escape from persecution. This was the height of the Crusades, and Jews were affected by the Crusades, just as Muslims were. Sought refuge in this very tower, or a castle that was on the site of this tower. A gang of local York, whatever the collective noun for people from York is, came up to the tower and set it on fire. It was the worst pogrom in English history.
Today, a memorial stands outside of the tower to remember the Jews that were killed in this pogrom. Now, one of the highlights of York is this street, the Shambles, which is one of the few parts of medieval York to still exist to the modern day in as close to its original form as it would have been.
And now we come to medieval York. In fact, one of the parts in medieval city to still exist. Welcome to the Shambles. It's exactly what you would expect. Lovely, quaint. There's a pub. There's probably multiple pubs. Little cafe shops. And I think if you're wondering where Diagon Alley comes from, This is Diagon Alley.
He looks happy enough. He just got a tight lead.
There was a lot of people in Harry Potter cosplay on the shambles. And another feature of medieval York is obviously the city walls. However, I have laid off on talking about them until now because of the role that they played in the English Civil War.
Walls are kind of important back in medieval times, and York was no exception of these, as this is the medieval city wall, which surrounds the city. And make no mistake, this wall has been used. During the English Civil War, York was a royalist stronghold in a fairly parliamentarian part of the country, and as such, the parliamentarians put the city of York under siege. We saw earlier, I took a picture of Micklegate. That is where the city of York surrendered to the parliamentarians. Now, the parliamentarians obviously didn't last very long. It was basically just Oliver Cromwell, and then when he kicked everyone hated him and brought back the monarchy.
And by now we have reached out of the medieval era into the early modern period, where we find the end of the story of a very notorious British criminal.
Now, we come here to the 1700s, to this place, St. George's Church, and we're looking for, I believe it's that grave down there. Let's go have a look. Yep, it's this grave down here. This, like that, it's the grave of Dick Turpin, notorious highwayman and horse stealer, executed at Tyburn on the 7th of April 1739. He's buried right there. The name on top of that, John Palmer, the story of how Dick Turpin got caught is a funny one, to be frank. You see, he got arrested. He's most known down in the southeast around Kent, but he came up here and took on the pseudonym of John Palmer. And while he was up here, he was arrested for stealing chickens. I don't know why, he just stole some chickens, so he got arrested for that. And when he wrote, his plea for bail, the postman who picked that up was actually the man who had taught Dick Turpin how to write. So he immediately recognised the handwriting and knew that they had caught the notorious highwayman, and quickly informed the authorities of who the man they had caught actually was. Which is just a little neat note there.
And, well, there you have a picture I also took of the grave, just in case this one wasn't good enough quality. And there was also a plaque put up near the grave by the York Dungeons to give some more information about Dick Turpin, who, if you're aware of Adamant, Stand and Deliver, yep, this is the highwayman that inspired the Dandy Highwayman. There's also the highwayman that supposedly was the one that rode Black Bess. And by now we have made it to Victorian York, the industrial era. And, of course, with the industrial era came trains. And York was quite crucial. It was key to the train network, as it became a major hub for trains heading between London and Edinburgh, which, as you can tell from the train that I caught on that morning, is still the case. And as such, York also plays host to the National Railway Museum, where I took a visit to, where they had not only a statue to George Stephenson, they also had a replica of Stephenson's rocket. A functioning replica, might I add. They also had the Mallard, and I might have got some funny looks for touching her strangely, because it's the Mallard. There was also a model railway, which is very adorable.
Imagine if it wasn't.
And speaking of trains, that brought my day in York to an end. And so I hopped the train back to Leeds, and then watched as the cross-country Voyager continued on her voyage all the way down to Plymouth. So, the final question emerges. Why did I do this? And the simple answer is because York is a very interesting place that you should definitely visit. There is so much history and culture packed into this one city that, honestly, I couldn't even do all of it in that one day. There was still many museums and attractions that I missed out on. There was the Viking Dig, there was the York Dungeons, there was the castle, and even the Minster itself, while I went around on the outside, I did not go in. And so, there was also the York Ghost Tours as well, that was on the Shambles. And I just want to highlight just how much history there is across the UK, not just in London. And I really think tourists should, especially when they are visiting the UK, come out to a lot of these other places, like York, like Edinburgh, like Bristol, and experience, these parts of Britain that they've never seen, these parts of our history. Because the Vikings didn't really do much down in London, but they certainly did up here in Yorkshire. And I think that is my piece said for this video. So I will see you all next time. Why, if it isn't ye old pub, the B-17 Super Fortress. I guess you're the December topic, aren't you? Well, I'll see you next month for that then.